All right.
Okay, that's fine. Like, I was just gonna say, I didn't use it. It's like, it starts dying after you go off.
Yeah. Yes. And,
Health systems?
so we've got, oh, on the panel, we've got Meredith and Trenton.
Okay.
So you'll go after they do, because I think it'll shift our discussion there. I invite you to come.
Sounds good.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how crazy is your, maybe more specifically business life right now?
But are you talking about like business or like buyers?
Generally business, like, okay, all things not personal, like business, yeah.
Right now, we're, I would say we're like 9, but it's because we need agents really bad.
Okay.
Brian and I are on phones and taking, we have, like, my parents growing up and everyone's busy.
Right.
Everyone's busy and just things to do, so that's probably. Big thing.
I feel like we're in a, by we, I mean me,
Yeah.
in a similar boat.
Yeah.
Trenton, on a scale of 1 to 10, how chaotic or crazy is your work life right now? Scale of 1 to 10.
6. That's what it is.
So again,
It's got Sheila.
Yeah, this is pretty good.
I tell everybody, this is literally what I say. I need a Sheila.
Yeah.
I need,
Yeah, they hear that a lot.
I need a buddy. All right. Guys, oh, it is 12:31. Anyone who has taken a class with me knows I like to start right on time. And if you come in a little bit late, that's fine, it happens. All right, Zoom. I know we have some folks who are gonna sign in on Zoom, so let me just see what we got here. We got people on. All right. Zoom, throw a chat up if you cannot hear me, but I think we should be unrecorded, or we should be recording right now, unmuted. All right, so if I have not met you, my name is Kate. I really consider myself just a facilitator for today. So I will start off by muting this fantastic music. I know. Can we leave it on? So I'll start off by going through a pretty quick how-to, but I really want to shift it very quickly to our heavy hitters that we have in the room today, our expert listing agents, top agents, team owners who have done this 1,000 times more than I have, probably literally. And so before we get started, show of hands who has never done a CMA before. Never done a CMA, okay? We've got a few folks. You count as never doing a CMA? We've got a couple folks who have never done a CMA before. Who has done 5 or less CMAs? Show of hands. Or less, okay, keep your hands up. Who has done 20 or less CMAs? Okay, so about a fourth of the room has done 20 or less CMAs, just as the heads up to our panel. And so we're going to approach this from a very basic level, starting at the beginning, just the quick buttonology and how to, but we're also going to get into some maybe unique situations or situations where our agents had to think through where the criteria wasn't as cut and dry, comparables and adjustments weren't as cut and dry. So while we're going to start at the basics, we want to leave the basics pretty quickly and start getting into those situations that you'll have to think through. Okay. All right, so I will, because we're recording, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. You can reference the recording later, but I'm going to start a CMA and just work through the buttonology here on Matrix. So top left corner, Matrix. You can go down to My CMAs. There are actually several ways to start a CMA. I'm going from the dashboard, but you can also actually start a CMA from a listing. But for now, let's do it this way. I'm going to go to the bottom left here, start a CMA. Personally, I don't put a contact name in there. I just use the description here to help me recall which one it is. What you can do is customize the package of your CMA. I've already set up what I like to put in a CMA. Everybody is different. For the purposes of today, I'm not going to walk through too much of what these are. I would encourage you to review them and the details and decide how you want to convey information to your clients and what you think is redundant. That sometimes you'll see the same information in two different versions of these tabs, and you just like the way one is pictured over another. And so my default is this. I like to keep it very short and sweet, where I show them the house. I show them the map of the house and, relative to the comparables that I've selected. And I send them, what we all know as the comparable adjustment chart, where you've got I do it in a vertical way so that they can see, they can compare them all side by side. And then we wrap it up with a price recommendation. That's just me. You can find your own way of conveying that information, okay? The static section, this is all just education. It's kind of a narrative form. It's stock. It just explains to your client how we price, how this works. I take all of that out personally. Up to you. All right, so let's jump in for the subject. There are a couple of ways that you can input the subject property. You can start from scratch by filling out the field. Sometimes you may get a listing that's never been in the MLS before, and you have to pull from the tax data, pull from what you know about the house, and input the fields manually. It's going to look like this. It's pretty straightforward. You do not have to have data for all of these fields, but they are available to you. You're going to see in a second the ones that are filled out as standard when you fill from a listing. The way that I tend to do it is I just go here, search for a listing, unselect active, because if you're filling from an active listing, something else is wrong, potentially, I guess. Maybe there are scenarios like that. All right, so I put in the street address of this. I'm going to find 4 historic results. This incomplete one, that's mine, so ignore that one. But we can see that most recently it was listed before it was sold, or leased before it was sold, or more recently than it was sold, excuse me. And then we've got this last sold. Personally, I like to fill from a listing that has sold. The input of
Close the blinds.
oh yeah,
So
for
you're
sure.
having some issues back there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if we want to cut the lights in the back, you can, by all means. So fill from a listing that was a lease in the past, you may find that it's got incomplete data, or potentially, I don't know why this is, but sometimes it's just less accurate. I don't know if there's more at stake for sales than there is for a rental. But I would prefer an older sale listing than a newer rental listing. This is just me. And so we're going to fill from that. I double check it. Yep, looks good. Select it and fill from that. You'll see here, there are many fields that are not filled out. And that's okay. This is just what's in there. I am not going to go too much through the customization here because I want to let our experts do that. But I will just add here that if you know, for instance, that you have a pool, or you have some really great hardscaping, landscaping, anything that you want to add value for, or if you know that it's in terrible condition, for instance, and you know that you're going to be adjusting for condition, then this is a place where you can add those fields. So sometimes you may just say like, cool, okay. Or if you've already kind of scrubbed your comparables, and our agents will talk about how you find your comparables, but let's say you've already done that and you've noticed that many of them are not upgraded, but yours is. You may want to add a line for upgrades, right? And it's just a custom label. Same thing, fences, whatever it is that you think is going to add value, that you are going to need to adjust for later. This is where you add it. And I'm going to show you where that shows up as we move forward here. Okay. Questions here? focusing on the how-to.
I got a question.
Yes,
I didn't see how you, I guess I got a little too late. I didn't see how you got to this spot from, you said it's from Matrix.
yes, sir. So we go to Matrix and My CMAs here at the bottom. It's gonna pull up a list of CMAs that you already have going. And in this case, you would go to the bottom left and hit a plus sign that says start a new CMA. And then you get to that start button right here.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. So we've filled out the information for our subject. We have identified fields that we expect to adjust next and later. The cover page, this is just, you know, what do you want this to look like? I've got my little signature set up here with an obsolete email. That's great. Anyway, moving on. Comparables. So this is where you're going to choose the comparables that you want to use. I don't want to get too far into how we choose what those comparables are, because that's part of our next section here as we walk through the example CMAs. But I'm just advice how you decide what the comparables are. But I'm going to help you find out how to select them here. You know what all these fields are, especially if you've worked in the MLS or sat in our MLS class. But you know, we tend to start at least with the same neighborhood, right? Maybe comparable neighborhoods right next to that one. Elementary schools is how at least that's how I was taught to open up the aperture. But again, I think we're going to get into that a little bit today. But let me just say, I know that he is in the Hunter's Crossing, and they're all kind of like, this is like one, I don't know what you even call this, but it's just a section of a bunch of neighborhoods here together. So what I do is you're only going to want to use solds for your comparables, but just as part of my market research, I go ahead and highlight all this other stuff too. Do we know something in that neighborhood that's about to come soon? That would be good to know, right? So I go ahead and do this. We start, especially in this market, I understand appraisers are starting or preferring within the last 6 months, given everything that's changed. But if you aren't finding anything, then you could go to 270. But this is how I at least start to select it. And then we get these results. I'm gonna adjust by, oh no, this is doing that thing, never mind. So then what I would do is just kind of go through these and start to research, right? This is where this is the phase where I just kind of see, okay, what's out there, what's been on the market, what is sold. And then now I'm going to go ahead and jump straight to, I'm going to go back to my criteria. And for the sake of instruction, I'm going to limit these just to solds. Okay. Because this is how we select what the comparables are. I know that my listing is a ranch with bonus. So I'm going to most likely try to find ranch with bonuses in, you know, plus or minus 200 to 300 square feet of my 1834 square foot of this house, right? So that's what I would start to do next. All right. I will go through these. I know French Horn is one. Boop, 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 boop. Now remember, I'm just going to do the, go away Zoom. Sorry guys, stand by. I'm going to focus on the buttons here more than the decision-making process. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead for what I know. We would use 3 to 5 of these, and I'm going to go ahead and add selected. Okay. From here, these are the comparables that I've chosen. So when you have that graph of your subject compared to each comparable, these are the properties that are going to go in there. Again, in a little bit, we're going to go into why you would select these 4 in this instance. But this is how you add them. Okay. Questions so far? Yes, ma'am.
So you said that you know that you are trying to find ranch homes because that's what your subject is.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way for you to see it right off the list, what are ranch homes, right?
So you would go into each listing. Okay. There's also probably a way. Let me go to this real quick. We're going to go back to add from listings. We're going to go to those results. And you can,
trying to find which ones are ranch and which ones are two.
Yeah, so I'm
Search
trying-
criteria, search criteria.
Oh, on that side, yes. Do you mean how you view though, the field from this chart?
Just off of that list.
Yeah, so assuming that you wanted to see the 2 stories as well, you can add columns. I just, go
You can
ahead.
change the view too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Versus
Yeah,
view.
I like that way better.
But sometimes those
Oh,
look
gotcha.
like a ranch and they aren't a ranch, so.
Nope, you're right. Nope, great point. Yes, there we go.
Got it.
Does that help?
Okay, are you recording or do you need to?
I'm really glad you asked me that. I am. After last time, I don't want to reteach this. Yeah, we're good. Any other questions up to this point? All right. Okay, so we're leaving this off where we have those 4 comparables, right? And then you can see here, this is the maps, a version of the picture that would go into the PDF, okay? Very nice, you can look at it there. Yeah, they're all in the same neighborhood. I don't have anything hitting out of the area. Here's where you go to adjustments. And I'm gonna try not to go too far down the rabbit hole of actually making adjustments and making those decisions, but I do want to walk you through how we do this. So I am going to input some values. Please don't ask me why I chose those values because that's for the next section here. But we have here at Keller Williams, and we're also working on updating this, a list of values for items that appraisers will adjust for, right? I think it's what, 3 years old by now, the old one that we had?
Yeah, there's money on an hourly basis, like I think.
That one, yeah, and we've received many appraisals, thank you, Welcome Home team, that we want to sift through and see how appraisers are adjusting these same items today. But in the meantime, what I have done over the last couple of years, and I encourage everybody to do the same, is every buyer you get, or every appraisal you get for that matter, scrub them yourself and start to make your own chart. So I started this from my very first sale, and I haven't done anything with it for like a year and a half, so it's a little outdated, but I've been able to go through and notice like, oh, they had condition 3 for all of them. So this is how I saw that he was adjusting it, right? And you can just go through, and I put the address here, so I remember that property, and that's, you know, the type of thing that he was adjusting. All that to say, we have on and this Keller Williams adjustments here, this was a list. This was based on the list that we have from 2020. And then if I saw an appraiser adjust for it as well, I would add my own. But based on what we had on that list, we had bathroom, or this was actually a recent appraisal, but we've seen 2,500 for a bathroom. We've got, let's see, I think it was like 650 on the Keller Williams one, if I'm not mistaken. So all of that said, you would put this here, okay? So if a half bath is worth 600, and how much is for conversation later, right? But just for illustration purposes. And a full bath is worth, seen 1,250, I don't know, vary. Bedrooms worth 800. You can input these amounts and it's going to automatically adjust it based on the data in the MLS, okay? So focus less on the numbers I put up here and how I did it. All right. Garage spaces, it all equates here, but we can see on this spreadsheet, for instance, let's see, I think I've got like a garage, where was our Keller Williams adjustment? We had like $3,000 to $5,000 for a garage. So depending on what you're adjusting, if you knew that it was worth $5,000 for like a third car or something, you might put that there, right? Here's the other thing real quick. Sold square foot. For this house, I'm going to use $50 a square foot, just because I know that that's what I'm seeing a lot for this price point in this area. I don't want to go too far down this road, but I'm sorry, I do have to explain this a little bit, panel. I know that a lot of us are taught to take the average price per square foot and divide that in half. And that's what we use for a price per square foot adjustment. That said, As I look at recent appraisals, that's not how they're doing it. It really does seem to be, and y'all can by all means say if you've noticed otherwise, 40 or 50 bucks a square foot, just period. It doesn't equal half of the average of the comparables. So just be aware of that. Depending on the price point of the house, I tend to pick 40 to 50, and I'm just putting that number in there for illustrations purposes. Please don't do 50 for all of your properties. Just know that, okay? And then you put all this in there. If there were some pools, what you would say is like, let's just say French Horn had a pool, and you would, sorry, my bad guys. You would say they do have one, and then maybe the rest have 0. Just giving you an example here. And then if it's worth $5,000, you could see how these would be, sorry, in this case, you would be reducing it by $5,000 if you knew that your subject did not have one. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there? Remember how I added these in the subject section? Remember I added like pool, upgrades, fence, things like that? What you can also do, and I apologize, I forgot to mention this, is if you know that you don't have a pool, but one of your comparables does, you can say 0. But if you know, for instance, that you do have a fence and you want to adjust for it, if you choose to do that, and one of your comparables doesn't, you can just say 1, right? And what that's going to do is if you say that a fence is worth $1,000 and your subject property has 1 fence and your comparable has 0, then it's going to automatically adjust for you. Okay. So watch this. I have said that we have a fence. It's worth $1,000 because I looked at my spreadsheet and it said it was. It's now automatically adding that value. Okay. I think upgrades tend to be a bit more arbitrary, and I'm going to let our panel talk through that if it comes up, right? And so then we've gone through, the quick inputs of this CMA. This is just how you do it, not what goes into it necessarily. And then you end up with an adjusted price range. So here is the sales price of your comparables in this column right here. Okay. The adjusted price after you've done all this math is right here. And I'm going to stay away from the conversation for now about how you choose the price that you want to list at in that range. We're going to have that mentioned, and that'll come up later. But just know that this is your price range, given just the inputs that I put in here. And again, we were kind of quickly picking comparables and quickly putting some math in there. But this is where you would begin to finalize your pricing based on how your subject compares to these comparables. Okay. If you know of a very close, like let's say this second one on Judy Drive was a very, very close comparable, I might weight that adjusted price much heavier than the adjusted price of something else, right? Okay. That was a very quick run through of how we work the technology side of a CMA. Any questions on this before I bring our panel up to start talking through example CMAs they've done and the decisions they've made? Yes, ma'am.
So you said that you normally stay within that neighborhood. I don't know if you already said this before. If you don't find anything, how far out do you go?
Let's put a pin in that question.
Okay.
I think it's going to come up as we answer. I think we can revisit that if you don't get the answer you're looking for. Okay. Anything else from a technology side that I haven't said, agents, that you think it's worth sharing? Sorry. Anything else? We've got some seasoned folks in the room too. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question. Is that Excel spreadsheet available? Where could we find like the adjustments?
Working on that. Yeah. So this is just.
Is that the one from Keller Williams, or is that your personal one?
This is fine. But we want to both update this and then blast it out.
Okay.
Bear with me because things are very busy and chaotic for me right now.
but we'll get it to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
There is an outdated version.
There
on the
is.
code.
It's like a PDF.
Yep.
And it's a list.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, cool. Trenton. You wanna come up here? I'll log out. You wanna jump in and walk us through yours? Cool.
Good
Oh,
job,
I tried to
Kate.
log out. No. Just to get us started. There you go. This class could start off like 5 right at the time, and now we're full. I know. Yeah.
Okay, so while that's pulling up, I will tell you guys this, there's a bunch of different ways to do this.
Mhm.
So the way that I do it might be different from what Sharon says or what Meredith says. It's not right or wrong, it's just different. So, because I don't use that spreadsheet, for example.
That's exactly why we're doing the class this way and not the way how we've done it before, like kind of 1 or 2 people talk through the whole thing. I want y'all to see all the different perspectives and let's have a conversation, okay? So, can you say?
So this house, I think we closed on it last month. This is out in Braxton Village. I chose this one because it was recent, but look, if I was a brand new agent and I didn't have the experience under my belt, I wish I would have had that sheet. Because Sharon knows what we had years and years and years ago at our old firm. We didn't have anything like this. So what we had to do was we had to get our appraisals every time we had a buyer and study what they gave adjustments for. So, you know, adjustments and how to pick comps are going to be something that come up a lot. I know Sharon has had this conversation with appraisers because it used to be a lot more difficult to get homes at value than it is right now. And we used to have to get on the phone with appraisers and argue with them a little bit. And some appraisers say, countertop's countertop, floor's a floor. That's not the way the seller feels about it when they upgraded their countertop. That the dollar they spent into it, it's not the same.
Doesn't matter if it's brand new. or-
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's brand new roof, shingles or shingles, right? And so the definition of opinion, appraisal is opinion, a value. So what you need to be telling your sellers is, look, you get 5 different appraisers in here, you're gonna get 5 different numbers. So it's not your job as an agent to give them the exact dollar that they have sell their house for. Your job is to get them in the ballpark. Okay, so, I mean, this house in particular, the biggest adjustments were for square footage. Now, I was able to stay in the neighborhood. But I mean, you look at this second comp, it's $89,000 adjustment. And that's strictly square footage. So, you know, one of the questions that I've asked a lot is, what's more important? A house that sold last week or a house that sold 3 months ago right next door and the one that sold last week is a mile down the road? Like, which one's better?
Last week.
Depends on who you talk to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying, like, you don't know, there's no exact science to it, that's the point. So you gotta be able to explain why you chose what you chose. So if you got one that's a mile away that sold yesterday, and one that's right next door that sold 4, 5, 6 months ago, you gotta be able to explain why you chose the one that you chose, okay? And so there's some reasons why you might choose one over the other. But this one, I mean, the major difference here is gonna be square footage, and then you look at the adjustments for bedrooms, $3,000 for a bedroom. I didn't look at a spreadsheet, I just gave it $3,000. Now, some of that's experience, but some of this, guys, it's like this. This house is out in Grace Creek. I'm not giving $3,000 for a bedroom in Greystone, which is, you know, a very, very, very upscale neighborhood. Forest Lakes is right here. It's a really, really upscale neighborhood. it's getting more than $3,000 per bedroom. So where you're doing your CMA matters, like the neighborhoods matter. And so it's not just, oh, it's a bedroom, it's $3,000. No, where is this bedroom? Like, where's this house at? Those are the things that I look at. Bathrooms, the same thing. I gave $2,800 for a full bath. Sharon might not do that, and that doesn't mean that she's right or I'm wrong or vice versa. It's just different values. Because $500 on an adjustment is not gonna destroy your CMA, and it's not gonna mess up your clients. Your job is to put them in the ballpark. That's the way that I look at it. Same thing with this half bath here. And let me define ballpark, by the way. We sold this house, I think we listed it at $390, we sold it at $400. Ballpark is not like $350 when it's worth $400. Ballpark is $395 to $398 when it's worth $400, right? So let's define what ballpark is. The updates tab that you showed them a little bit ago, I use that a lot because I'm not going to sit down on the computer and go, okay, crown molding, did it have chair rails? How wide was the trim? Was it, 3 inches or 2.5 inches, or was it upgraded? I'm not going detail by detail through this house. I'm gonna look at the photos and go, is this upgraded better than the one I walked in? Yes or no? And if it is by a lot, then I'm gonna put a higher dollar amount in the updates tab. If it's a little bit, then I'll put a little bit. And if it's really not, then I may subtract some out or leave it alone.
Can you give an idea of range? Now, let's do range of averages, right? So when we say a lot different, the granite, the floors, maybe there's some ground molding versus a laminate countertop and carpet in in the common areas, for instance. When you say a lot versus a little bit, what kind of range are you talking about? 2 to 10, or are you talking 2 to 50?
Yeah, no, it's not 50. It's
Right.
it's 2 to 10. I mean, it really just depends on. If one house has got granite countertops and another house has got laminate countertops, but everything else in the house is pretty comparable, I won't even barely make an adjustment. Sometimes I don't even mess with it at all. Because the adjustment is so small that it's not going to destroy your CMA. Now listen, you may get other people, and maybe these two do it. Maybe they'll go, oh, you have to make that adjustment. You got to, because it's different. Okay, well then make the adjustment. I'm just telling you that I don't, because to me, it's not a big enough dollar amount that makes a difference. Not only do I want to get it right, which is the most important thing, and put them in the right ballpark, I also don't have 6 hours to spend on it either, obsessing over every detail. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
How much, do you know what you were using for your price per square foot adjustment here? Or
So-
or at least how you come up with them?
so how I came up with it is I will add up. You were in y'all in Melissa's
Yeah.
CMA class that she did a long time ago. Yeah. There's like this crazy math equation. So it's for each house. So you take the sales price is 310 on the first one, and you divide it by the square footage. And you take that number and set it off to the side. And then the second one, you get the price per square foot for each house. And then you add that up, divide it by 3, that gives you an average. And then you take that number and divide it by 2. Okay,
It seems to work though, in my.
It does work.
It seems to work.
I don't know how it works, but it works.
Came up with
Yep.
Who came up with it, but it worked.
I've been rolling with it since I
What
learned
do
it.
you say, Sharon?
I was just saying, I remember that, but I couldn't remember. I've been wanting to get that equation, typically depending on the price point, but commonly it's like $40.
That's right.
And if I'm trying to fight something, I'll just budget on it for my sellers.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on where the house is, I've been as high as 60, 67, 68, 40s, 50s. But that's the equation. You get the price per square foot of each house, add it together, divide by 3, divide by 2.
Can I throw a caveat on there real quick?
Yeah.
So with prices having changed as much as they have and as little time as they have, to Sharon's point, the equation of the average price per square foot divided by 2, what I was taught too, just 2.5 years ago. But what I'm seeing in nearly every appraisal I get is something $40, $50, $45, $50 a square foot. So it's almost like that hasn't, but if we have a neighborhood where the average price per square foot, say, like, or your comps are 150, for instance, and that's not all that crazy at some of our nicer price points, that's $75 a square foot adjustment. And we're really not seeing that done by appraisers, even for a house I had, it was a $700,000 house, $50 a square foot. in Hayman. So just be aware that yes, you go by that, but if your finished product seems a little bit off compared to the comps, or you're trying to figure out where to land in the range, just know that that could be playing a factor.
So there's,
Kind of on the same subject as basement square footage,
Uh-huh.
whenever you look grade. Just making sure that you know, it's like if you're going to a listing and there's a basement, it doesn't matter how pretty it is. If it's got high ceilings,
Yeah.
walkout basement, it's still counted as a basement and you're not gonna get full value for that.
Yeah.
That's another hand.
I've had a lot of people go, well, I mean, like, how do you know what this is worth? And it's just kind of, it's a feel. It's kind of a feel thing and you don't get that experience. For example, you know, when I look at a bunch of comps in a neighborhood like this one, and they were all in the same neighborhood, well, I can kind of look at what they all sold for. And without punching in any number, I kind of have an idea of where I should be. So like if that price per square foot equation is not where I kind of already know it needs to be, then I gotta look at some other things, like different adjustments, things like that. It gets really tricky when you don't have the amount of comps that you need in a neighborhood. But I mean, at 90% of the time, this isn't really that hard.
Right.
So. I mean, I don't know what you want to know,
Well,
but that's what I got.
I was told recently again, because I was like, why the hell do we divide it by 2? Like, yes, that's just the equation we were given and it works and everything, but it was explained to me where like my light bulb came on a little bit. And so just for like knowledge purposes, it was explained to me that we adjust for the upgrades, the actual rooms, we give value for those rooms, like bedrooms, bathrooms, stuff like that, that have the counters, the walls, the crown mold and all of that. So when you're adjusting by square footage, we are actually adjusting that empty space. So the size of those bedrooms are bigger or smaller. The size of that living room is bigger or smaller. So we don't give it the full average price per square foot adjustment because we're actually just adjusting space and not actual, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good point. Yeah, which is why I was always told you don't count bedrooms, because that's counted in the square footage.
Yeah. And
So
yeah,
it's just
it is kind of weird.
I've seen both, yeah. Right. Any questions for Ken?
Oh, yeah, bring it up.
I don't really understand the math part of it. Can you do, like, what are the numbers that you're taking from here?
Yeah, pull out your calculator. All right, tell me when you're ready.
Right,
All right, so 310,000. Divided by 2840. Now take that number, set it off to the side.
Yeah.
Okay. 329.9. Divided by 2018. Set that number off to the side. 385. 385,000.
Well, the adjustments, I think, are right there under the square footage, right?
Divided by 3282. Yeah, they're right, sitting right there. I'm just doing the wrong way. All right, you got all three of those numbers?
well, I missed the second one, sorry.
It's $163.
163.48. Yeah.
My eyes can't see.
163.48.
Yes, you got
It's
that.
changed.
It's still old.
What was the price per square foot on the second one, I'm sorry?
163.48.
Okay,
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, so take all three of those numbers,
Okay.
add them together.
do you do the point, do you go out a couple of decimal points, or do you just round down?
I'll round up at the end.
Okay. Okay,
All right, and then, so you got that number?
Yeah.
Divided by 2. But you added those three up, right? You added those three up, divide by 3.
oh, divide by 3.
Yep, divide by 3 and then take that and divide by 2.
May I add something? If you're doing the CMA and you go to pricing, it already has the average square foot and then you just divide by 2.
There you go.
So, but when I divide by 3, I'm at 129, when I divide by 264, so that actually doesn't make sense, sorry, when I did it myself, it was like 25, and I was like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
So you're taking all three numbers and then you said divided by 3. Well, yeah, taking all three numbers, adding those together, then dividing by 3, and then taking that answer divided by 2.
Yep.
And that's if you use 3 houses, if you use.
Yeah, that's if
four,
you use 3 houses. Yeah. I only use 3, I don't use.
Okay, so you just find the average and then divide by 2.
Yeah.
That's correct. Okay, now good, thank you.
But I wouldn't, does that work if you're using more than 3 houses?
Yeah.
Cause I've never used more than 3 houses.
Yeah.
before. Does it
Yeah.
work?
It's the same
You're
thing.
just divide by
Yeah, I never
4.
tried.
Yeah.
4 or 5. Yeah, but I'm talking about the divided by 2 part. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Also, what is the average of houses that you're supposed to use? Is there a number? Is it less than 3?
3,
Almost
typically.
3 to 5, right? So at least 3 though.
Gotcha.
4 or 5, because I'm like, these are good, this one's good, sweet, like, my numbers are solid.
Any other questions for Trenton or Trenton? Is there anything anything else you wanna hit on this?
I could talk forever about it. It's not like, turn the key, turn the knob and boom, the door's open. Like, it's not that simple. There's a lot of different things because there's different houses in different areas and different appraisers and different opinions and different
What's
ways to do it.
What's your opinion on the triage that she had asked about? Let's say in this neighborhood, there was no comps, right? Like nothing had sold in the last 8 months. And so she asked like, how far out should you go?
Yep.
Or are you looking like what would be just a basic, where would you go?
So there's a couple of different ways to do it. You can go, okay, well, I don't have any comps in this neighborhood, so you can go to nearby neighborhoods in the past 6 months, see what's out there. And when I run into a case where I don't have a bunch of comps, then I'll do it 2 or 3 different ways to see what all's out there. So you go back, maybe you go back in the same neighborhood beyond 6 months. Maybe you go to surrounding neighborhoods within 6 months. Then if you still don't have anything, maybe you back it out to the school district. See what's in that school district.
Do you do 30 days or do you do 60? I mean, 30 days, 90 days.
Oh, I'll back it out all the way to 6 months. Because I'd rather have too many than not enough. And if I get more, if I back it out to the school district and I get 83 results, I'm not going through 83 homes. So I'm gonna go a little bit, zoom in a little bit more. And so I would do that by being more recent in the time sold.
Okay.
So instead of going 6 months, I would shrink it down to like 90 days and see what I get. But if that's still too much, then I go 30 days.
What kind of adjustment would you make for appliances? Like if one house doesn't have appliances, what type of adjustment would you make?
If it doesn't have appliances,
Yeah, like if it doesn't have like a fridge and a stove, like every now and then you come across the kitchen and it's like, oh, it needs appliances. Like what would you make that adjustment for?
I mean, you get an appliance package for $2,000.
So you really wouldn't account it into the.
I mean, you can give it a couple $1,000s, and I would just put that on the upgrades tab if it's gonna have no appliances.
Thank you.
Sure.
We're so all these questions that we're asking, we can ask them again for the CMAs. That's the reason that we're gonna do it the way that we're doing it. So Meredith is gonna jump up here and talk through, when we start talking about neighborhoods and areas, Meredith has a great example on that.
I mean, I can pull it up or just talk through it. It's basically, and I'm glad Trenton went before me because we do things very similarly and that like, at some point, you're gonna have so much experience under your belt and looking at these things, that it's gonna be an intuition. You're gonna be looking at the homes and you're gonna be able to identify what's comparable and what's not comparable based on the condition. Or maybe like, there's a new home and your house is completely renovated, and like, how do you make those calls based on like an outdated home? So it's gonna become like an intuition thing, but until then, the spreadsheets and that list of CMA adjustments is like what I lived off of for years. But I do wish in the beginning that somebody would have talked to me, kind of like how we are, just super casually about, it's not black and white, you're not gonna do it right or wrong, and everybody does it differently. Like when I was buying my own home that I live in now, I live in Westgate, there are so many comparables in that neighborhood, it's slam dunk, it's easy. So whenever we got it off market, and so I kind of had to like come up with the price that I wanted to pay for it, and it was this weird scenario, so I did a pretty thorough CMA on it. Well, when the appraisal came back, I was shocked. It came in $1 under value. Like, why would you do that? But it did. I was like, don't worry, I've got this. But I guess I'll make up that difference. But I didn't like She chose homes outside of the neighborhood, Westgate. She chose a new construction, which if you guys are familiar with Rayburn, like we're in Westgate, it's huge. And I would really go outside of like the pines to the oaks or the pines to the hollies, but I do depending on the upgrades made. She went to like Turnberry and like, I did not agree with it, but I wasn't gonna fight over $1. But that really opened my eyes because one of the comparables that I did use was there was a 500 square foot difference. And she said the VA will not accept anything within a 500 square foot difference. And that's the first time I had heard that. So I was like, So now picking up that little bit of knowledge, it's just one other thing that I try to focus on. Like you thought Trenton's huge thing he did, it worked out for him. Like it might work out for him. Where in another case, if you have comparables that are closer to that square footage range, then go with that.
Yeah.
But if square footage is all I got going for me and the rest of the crap, the house is like crap compared to what I've got going on, then I might want to choose one that has higher square footage. It's just an intuition thing, and just know that it's not black and white. And you can't, like he said, different appraisers are going to do it different ways. I was researching appraisals before like the class, and somebody gave a pool $7,000. Somebody gave a pool $4,000. What type of pool is it? What house is it attached to? Like it's all of the things that have to be considered. And I know that makes it really hard when people are doing this in the beginning, right? Because it's like, until you have those experiences, you're just really not sure. So lean on your coworkers, lean on the statistics from the appraisals that come through, like lean on the information that we have. And Sharon always gives like really great information on how to fight tidewaters and things like that. So I'm really excited to hear her talk about that. But when it comes time, you had better had that conversation with your seller client of how you came up with the value of the home. Like that's when we're doing $40 per square foot and my client's like, oh, my house is worth more than that. I have to be able to justify why I do that. And then for me, whenever I am going through the CMAs and you get that adjustment, the adjusted price range that we were going through, and like Kate went through really fast, so hers wasn't like narrowed down, but you could see like the gap was massive. So when you take your CMA and you show it to your client, they look at that high number every time, right? So you need to make sure that you're prepared to have a conversation of like, hey, this bathroom is outdated. These are all renovated or brand new. Like you have to have the conversation and walk them through and help them understand where you're coming up with your price. But that being said, when I do choose my comparable homes, I will really try very, very hard to compare apples to apples, which is what we should be doing. So like I have a house right now that's in Carolina Trace, and if you guys are familiar with that neighborhood, some homes are newer, some homes are super old, some homes are completely renovated and gorgeous, and some are like hodgepodge. One that I'm going to be listing here soon, it has 2 super outdated bathrooms, but it also has like the rest of it's pretty new, like it's been renovated along the way. So when I'm choosing comparables, I might have a very outdated home and I might have a newer home. And I just make sure that whenever I'm discussing numbers with him, I'm telling him where I came up with that average and where my intuition is telling me based on the condition of that home the day we list it. And I'll show pictures. And then it's his job to help me, like, I coach him where we need to go, but it's their job on where to price. But whenever we have to be fighting tidewater and all that stuff, you don't want them coming at you saying, like, you said I could list that top range. You want to like show them what you're seeing and tell them same thing that, you know, Trenton was saying. It's an appraiser's opinion. There could be various opinions on this. It's my job to hit it as close as possible. There's no way I'm going to be able to determine exactly what they're going to determine because we all have different opinions. And I always have that conversation right off the bat. And going with kind of the intuition talk, I was explaining to Kate, like I had a listing in a neighborhood that butt up to like Anderson Creek Club. In that neighborhood, it was, I think you guys have a listing in there, Center Hills. Mm-hmm. Most of them were on 1 acre lots, or a little bit more, a little bit less. And mine was a little outdated. When they bought it, I helped them buy it too, so I knew the home in and out. But I knew it was better than most of the comparables around the neighborhood. And I also knew I couldn't go to Anderson Creek Club because that's its own island, basically. So I just kind of pushed the envelope and I went on the other side of Anderson Creek Club, which took me further away than I would ever want to go, but I had a reason for it. So I priced it. I had buyer's agents calling me, why did you price that house so high? Why did you price it so high? I can't come up with this number. And I justified myself to them. We ended up selling slightly above list price and the appraisal was still good. So it's not like it's a deal breaker, because all the other ones, you can look at the homes that are comparable, same square footage, but if they're, let's say a manufactured home, because it's like kind of like, it's an interesting place, like it's Anderson Creek Club, and then there's like nice little neighborhoods tucked in there, new builds, and then there's like nothing, so it's, you kind of just have to use your gut and figure out where that home falls, and the best job I could do was to go out further than what I wanted to go. With that being said, I love the map search on our MLS. Is everybody familiar with the map search? You can just plug in your criteria. So like 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. I like to use a square footage range because, I had a personal experience with appraisers not liking square footage adjustments. So I try to neck it down as much as I can, usually like 400 or so. Sometimes I'll go 600 and just see what I come up with. And if I have to go more than that, I will. Just plug in the criteria, you go up to map, you put in your subject property, and you can draw a circle around your property. And you can go 0.5 miles, you don't come up with anything, 0.75 miles, don't come up with anything, a mile. And anything beyond that, I start to get sketched out because I don't think that they'll let me use that. But definitely, exactly what Trenton said, neighborhood. Then if I can't find neighborhood, I might play with the map tool next. And if I don't come up with anything there, elementary school. There tends to be more localized elementary schools than middle schools and high schools. So I'll start with elementary school for that same school district.
HOA versus not HOA neighborhoods. So like,
interesting.
let's say you've got a home in a neighborhood that's no HOA or whatever, pick one. It does or doesn't have an HOA. And you've got the Anderson Creek Club type thing or Gates 4 right there, whatever. And then you've got a couple of other pockets of neighborhoods. Does it affect your decision whether or not there's an HOA in the neighborhood or the character of the neighborhood?
I would lean more on character than HOA.
Okay.
For me personally. And I also know neighborhoods like Anderson Creek Club and Gates 4. I had one over in Jack Brook. Well, it was like beside Gates 4, but it wasn't in Gates 4. But the best comp I could find was in Gates 4. So find yourself an appraiser buddy that you can bounce questions off of. Because I have an appraiser buddy, and I think most of us call the same guy. But
That's true.
He's awesome and he's
Yes.
so willing to help us. But his name is Jay Poole, and he's really awesome at talking you through things. And I called him like, hey, I don't know what to do. My best comp is in Gates 4 and I don't know how to adjust. And he said you can do I think he called it just like a site adjustment or a location adjustment. And he kind of just, I don't know where they came up with it, but he was like, I would probably do like $30,000 on that.
Wow.
I wouldn't have guessed that
No.
at all. They almost share a property line, it was crazy, but
It depends on too, like if the HOA like takes care of, it's like less than $30 a month because it takes care of
right.
the little subdivision, y'all, like, patch.
Mhm.
Then who cares? If yours doesn't have an HOA, but if it's got a pool and a golf course
Right.
and tennis and a fishing pond, yeah, that's probably not quite a comparable neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah, same. That's exactly what I do. I just compare like apples to apples when it comes to the site. You also need to look out for what the homes around. I'm sure you guys are not going to be shocked to hear that a home sitting waterfront is going to be different than a home sitting in the woods. Golf course proximity is also huge. So things like that, you're just going to want to make sure you're monitoring it. And sometimes I do it if I'm like in a hurry to put some numbers together. Is I'll just look at what's sold and I'll find a home, even if it's not a good comparable, I'll find a home on a golf course if that's what I'm working around and see what it sold for. And then I'll find a comparable home that wasn't, even though it's not like my subject, but it helps me determine what that site adjustment was. So I'll just kind of reach outside the box and come up with what I need to do until I have the time to like really come through
Okay.
and look better.
Questions for Meredith?
Another thing that I do, this is kind of outside of like putting together a CMA, it's more like a listing thing, but I find it beneficial to always come prepared with some sort of numbers in your head for your listing. And if you don't know what kind of condition the home is, because sometimes you get the call and you don't have any record online, like there's no tax records, there's no past listings, and you have no idea what this house is gonna look like. I'll do kind of like a blanket CMA to show me what the range of homes are. And from that, I will pull all conditions. So I'll pull like a rundown home that I don't know if it's outdated or anything. And then I'll pull like pretty ready to rock, renovated, what have you. And so I'll have kind of like an average number in mind. And I will, if there's no information online at all, I'll ask square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms. I'll ask simple questions if I haven't been able to dive really into it. So I come with an idea, bounce it off of them, and then I always tell them I'm gonna really come through the market when I get back to do a full CMA, and I'll present it to them at a later time. Kind of like 2 of them.
Great.
Anything? All right, Sharon, take us away.
For me, I'm gonna, so you can stand and present, I'm gonna hopefully, oh, unless you wanna do it yourself.
No, either way, it doesn't matter.
I got a question. I got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I heard her say, great CMA neighborhood. What is considered a great CMA comps? Like, I heard her say this neighborhood had, and it was easy. What is considered a great CMA? I mean, comps for CMA.
Like Meredith was saying, if you go into a neighborhood and there's a lot of homes that are the same square footage, same neighborhood, and there's a lot that have sold, then you've got a lot to pick from. So that makes it easy, great CMA.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get you.
Right, yeah. Okay, cool. Before I start on mine, there was a couple of things that everyone said that kind of brought some points for me. When we were talking about, so we purposely, like when you look at the different comps and you know the seller is gonna wanna start really high, it's like we try to like, maybe there's one that for some fluke reason it sold at a really, really high price. Maybe we wouldn't use that one because we didn't want them to price it that high. Also, there are times when we do include one that's not the same. So for instance, if you have a seller and everything they have is dated, everything's carpet, brass fixtures, just, you know, just it's nice, but it's just not updated. Maybe I will use one of the renovated comps or a really nice one, because then I can show when I go to that listing appointment, I can say, basically this house sold for $140 a square foot. And you can see it's got a new HVAC, it's got a new roof, it's got lovely cabinets, it's got granite, it's got, you know, basically it's been totally redone. And that's kind of the price that you were wanting to, you know, so basically this is what this one sold at and you're comparing your house to this one. So sometimes I will do that just for my purposes. Also, I think that the best thing is, and I think everyone said this, is study the appraisal. Like any appraisal you get in, look at them. They're very different. Depends on the appraiser. You'll see some things on one that you've never seen before. This is going to get you familiar with that. So for us, we really don't even do like a formal report. What we do is we look at the active listings pendings and include links and explain the process of what we did and the pricing and things like that. I forgot what I was gonna say. The actives are important because that's competition, right? So, I mean, even if it's new construction, just anything in that area or that price range. So if I'm looking for, you know, I definitely want something with 4 bedrooms or, you know, 2,200 square feet or more, and I want to say under 350. Well, I might pull that whole county with the way inventory is now and see what this is, and this is your competition. So I may say, you know what, this is what the numbers show, but I think we can push it because there is not inventory here, and I think we can push it. Or the other way around. It's like, gosh, you know, you're priced higher and these all have nice, this one has a pool, this one has a 3-car garage. Yeah, we're gonna have to, regardless of what the comp show, we're gonna have to you know, adjust that. And then with the pendings on the solds. So, and then, so we don't do like a formal thing. How many people here have never had to respond to a Tidewater before? A couple people. Okay, you will.
I did that my first when I was here to them. I was like, Lord.
How many people have never had to respond with a reconsideration of value, which is on the buyer side? Cool. So we've actually done a lot of both, especially with this market. And so what we were starting to do was kind of take a little bit of, so there's a lot of part of the appraisal that's just like mumbo jumbo words, you know, and then you have the actual specific things with the houses and the adjustments. So this spreadsheet that I use is basically an excerpt of the appraisal form. So I don't have like the fee simple and some of those other terms on that. It's just the basic stuff. And then we use that. And the good thing about this is if we do this for our listing and we file this, when we do get Tidewater, I can pull this out and see if I can just submit it, put it on the Tidewater form. So we kind of focus more like on the Tidewater ROV aspect, to be able to do the CMA. And another thing too is like when you do have to do a Tidewater for people who haven't, you can't send comps like what you think of comps. You have to use a Tidewater form. You have to use the format that lender sends you, or a Tidewater form that basically is like a blank appraisal page. Question.
So what is a Tidewater?
Tidewater is when it's for VA loans, and it is when the appraiser cannot establish the value of what the contract price is. So VA is the only loan that will give you a chance to contest it. So, and you usually have like 48 hours. The lender will say, hey, we got Tidewater. They'll let the listing agent know. And then the listing agent has the opportunity to provide comparables and a Tidewater grid format to try to justify the price. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. It just depends. In the market that we've had, we'll like say, for instance, it's multiple offers and you got 20,000 over list, and there is no freaking way you can justify these comps. What we do is we send the sketch, because a sketch can make a difference as well. Because if it's more than 100 square feet off of what they're getting and what you've gotten, that could make or break, you know, part of that value. So we send a sketch and just say, this is all we're going to be doing, because we don't want to do more harm than good. And one of the things since this past market that we've seen is Tidewaters are not as effective as reconsideration of value. The reconsideration of value is how you're going to win an appraisal and get your value back, because it's coming from the buyer. The buyer is the client of the VA. It's going to the VA, and there's several components with the reconsideration of value. And I've got templates that I'd be happy to share. Caitlin, how many reconsideration of values have we done?
At least over 10 in the past year. And all but one have been successful.
All but one we've had success. One of the ones I had no comps to justify it. I called the buyer and I said, look, Mr. Buyer, the appraiser actually did you a favor, because I couldn't get comps so you can bring it up to what it appraised for. He helped you out. But I'll write a letter, you can write a letter, and it can't hurt. It ended up coming back up $6,000 with just the letter and no comps. So
can I just clarify something with that real quick? So for Tidewater, you get notice of Tidewater after the initial appraisal work has been done, before it has been submitted to the lender. And you have like 24 hours to turn around numbers to they don't tell you what the amount is that they've come up with. They could be $1 off or 50,000 or more, whatever. And you're just going to send them everything you can to try to get as close as you can. And they ask for it in a sheet that looks kind of like this, or like the appraisal. The reconsideration of value is after the appraisal has been submitted. It's like an appeal between the appraisal process of the lender and then closing. So the ROV is a huge process. I say huge. I feel like it's huge. It's very daunting.
Very time consuming.
So many things that go into it. It's a lot more than this matrix. So just being aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sharon, in your reconsideration letter, what are you putting in that?
I have templates that I can share. There's a template for our buyer and a template for the agent. And I think we have one here, but I'm going to back up just for a minute. But this is, so if you look at this, it's basically got the same things as the appraisal does. And then I can even put like how Kate was putting in the different things. I add those things to the blank. So it's a pool or something like that. If you go to the next one, this is one that we just did recently. Speaking of center, with Meredith, was yours 99 or 391?
99.
Oh, there's Meredith. So what I do with this, and I've gotten to where I'm like so used to it. Like I literally just jot this. I get full with the comparables that I want to use and try to tweak it to use the best one. And I just put it down on a notebook and then I just put it into this. But it's pretty much just fill in the blank And I have a cheat sheet for myself for the appraisals in the Tidewater forms. So I know like view is new and residential, and I've got a cheat sheet for that I can share as well. Same thing with like design and style, because the appraiser is, whether it's whatever it is, the more you use their terminology, the better it's gonna look for you. The age, I have seen appraisers adjust on age. Some do, some don't. The condition, and there's definitions of what that condition is, like Q, Q3, Q4, and just making sure that there are appraisers. Generally, you don't see adjustments, but you can. And I think Meredith was talking about, or Trent was talking about something where there was like a difference, and that's where like you might see it where it's like really dated or something like that. The total rooms, beds and baths. Now for me, like I've been told, don't adjust for bedrooms because that's gonna be adjusted into square footage. Again, like Trenton said, everyone's gonna do differently. But when you put, this is a subject property and this is the baseline, and then your comparables, you're putting the details for that. And then you just put the adjustments in as you go, and that's from your adjustment form. Same thing with the square footage, garage, and then so on the appraisal, it'll have like stoop, front porch, deck, patio, whatever, all in one. I divide it into each single thing for my purposes. And I'll even put like for my benefit, like if I'm using this for a CMA, like I put on here updated in Q. Dated. So that way if mine's updated in Q and this one's dated, okay, well, yeah, this appraiser might not get a value for laminate floor versus carpet, but it's going to sell better to a buyer, right? So that's kind of how I do it. And then I get the adjustments, and then you get the pricing. And you can see in here, there's a pretty wide range of pricing. It goes from $336 to $476. This was an unusual property. It was the neighborhood that Meredith was talking about. The acre, it's a lot, a 1 acre lot. Has an in-ground pool, has this massive deck, has a metal roof, privacy fence around the entire lot. So this one was a little bit trickier, and we did have to go further out to try to justify the price.
How did you decide? Do you remember how y'all decide to go further out? Like, did
Yeah,
you kind of go?
I think the main thing is that whatever you do, however method, like everyone's method that they chose, they're all right. You just have to be able to justify it to the appraiser. So for instance, if you have a like property, a half a mile from the property, but you skip that one and use another one, you know, they're gonna use that one and they're not gonna let you use a different one. So I think a lot of it is just based on, like, for this one, I actually looked in Harnett County. Like, so I have done the range as far as looking at the whole county, if it's an unusual property and has acreage or, you know, a barn, pasture or something like that. And so then I have gone as far as just looking at the whole county. And then I don't know. Yeah.
How do you adjust for acreage?
Good question. This is what Trenton was saying about, you just kind of like get a feel and see what you think. I know on one, I actually went to the tax records, which is not an accurate way at all, but I actually looked at it to see the difference in how they gave the lots to see if they were different. But typically, I'll just kind of gauge on what this value is giving the house. So, and what kind of acreage it is. So if it's like 3 acres, but 4 of it's swamp, I'm not gonna give it as much value. If it's gorgeous, cleared, you know, fence all around it and that kind of thing, then I'm gonna give it more. And a lot of that too, I think, is just from studying appraisals and just kind of getting a feel for it. I will also say, when it comes to something like the acreage, and some of these other things, I'll do this initially, and if it's not the price I want, if I'm fighting it for Tidewater ROV, I'll adjust it, and I'm like, maybe it's not 50,000 for the extra acreage. Let's put it down to 40. You know, so I'll adjust it and make it work for me.
I mean, appraisers do it, so why wouldn't you?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I mean, part of with my research, looking at the different values, I had said that I would be intending to use that to send to the VA with the ROV, showing there is such a subjective you know, if this person's given $500 for a half bathroom and this person's given $3,000 for a half bathroom, you know, just to show that there is a big variance. And then what was next? So this one, we actually just got the appraisal back. It's under contract.
Regarding pricing, like, let's say this was for a listing and you end up with a big range because it's unique and like, how big a range do you give the client to the purchase price?
It's tricky. We usually just try to kind of see what they're wanting to do. Like in this case, before we went on the appointment, the sellers were gonna list it for way less than what we suggested. And they were nervous about listing it at what we suggested. A lot of it just, so another thing too is like, if it's in a lower price point, if it's in a lower price point, under 250, under 275, you can push that. You know, you can push it. You can push it and you can also let that seller know that you can't price it too low because you're gonna get so many offers and people are gonna get their emotions involved and it's gonna go up and up. Also with the unique property, it's kind of the same thing. You have something with land or the pool or, you know, something like that, you're gonna be able to push that more. And so a lot of that will just depend on that seller's motivation on what they want to do. What's the next one?
I think you were on square footage.
Oh, yeah, oh yeah. And then there's garage, carport, and a lot of this stuff I learned just from, and I have a copy in here, but just looking at the description of the abbreviations, that helps it. So that way, if you know the description of the abbreviations, when you get appraisals in for your buyers, or if you get a copy, you know, as a listing agent, you can look at them and go, oh, okay. It's like, oh, what is that? You know, what's the difference between what's a 2 GBI, 2 GA? Anyone know? Anyone know what a 2 GA is?
Garage.
Take a guess. Car garage. And the 2 GBI means there's living space over the garage. Like bonus or something like that. So, and that's just from studying these. In-ground pool is another one that can be very subjective, but I've got anywhere from 8,000 to 16,000 from appraisals. Garages are very subjective, carports, that kind of thing. You know, and even if you look at our appraisal and it says patio and you see differences in value for patio, you can have just the regular patio, but then you can have this huge patio that goes around the pool. So each one of those is going to be different, and you just really have to get that experience and kind of get that feel for it.
I may not need to say this because this is covered in licensing, but when you have a comparable that has a feature that your subject does not, you subtract that value, right? Because that's like you're bringing down the adjusted price.
Yeah.
Just wanted to.
Yeah, there's one here where this one had a 3-car garage. So you can see that it's minus 10,000. It also had more square footage and of course the acreage. And with that one, I was like generous with the acreage because I had the room to deal with it.
Want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Go on there.
So this is the actual property, just to give you reference, that we were doing the comparable on. And then I've got the comparables that we used for that, just to kind of give our reference. So this one was priced really high, but it was very, very similar. It had 3.5 acres instead of 1 acre, but same county, had a pool. So it had some of the same things. It was updated like this one was. So that was my high price one, but it did have like 3-car garage.
Okay.
And then this was another one that was actually in the neighborhood, so use that one. I gave value for a metal roof because this roof looked like it was original. If it was a newer roof, just regular 3-top shingle newer roof, I may not have given value for the metal roof. And then this was another one that had acreage but it didn't have a pool, it didn't have a fence. So my thing with this is, this one is, yes, it has some more land, didn't have a garage, doesn't have a pool, doesn't have a fence around it. Didn't have the metal roof. So I also think about not just like the value, but the appeal to the buyer as well. So this is what I was talking about with the abbreviations. Basically, this is just the same thing. It's in the appraisal. So if you go back like towards the back of the appraisal, this is in the appraisal. So you can use any appraisal and look at this and get familiar with the, what the different terms are.
I
And
was always
then,
Googling them.
I
was Googling them. I didn't realize this was even in there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then this is the Q and the C, the condition and the quality. It has the definitions, and I just put it like in the sheet, just so I always had it. And didn't have to just pull up an appraisal, but it'll tell you the difference between the C 1, 2, 3, 4 and the Q 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is, I did the same thing that Kate did. So I have a sheet and starting, had an old one, so starting updating it, and I just have the different things that would give value, and then I'll just add to it as we have different things or new things. Out of those, there was one appraiser that gave adjustments for the Q and the C, and I just put a note there, so if I ever had an instance where I thought I might want to use that, I could go back to that appraisal and kind of see and look at the comparables and kind of see like what that looked like. Does anyone know what a 2 DW is?
2-car driveway.
Driveway? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they have different, so the driveway may not be the same number as the garage or whatever. This was actually the ROV we did. Okay. That we just got back today. So this was a property, the list price, the contract price was $165. The value came in at, it says 158, if you go down some. There you go, yep, 158, so $7,000 difference. Well, the seller wasn't budging because it was multiple offers, and with this price point, how is this buyer gonna go find another house in that price point? And he was getting closing costs covered. So this buyer was just gonna be out, plus they put all due diligence money in, inspection. So the little money they had was already in the house. And then if you go up, so that was, when we got the appraisal back, the listing agent did send comps for the Tidewater, but it still came back low. And if you go to the next one, so this is something that I can send out, but basically I have a template. And the buyer has to send a letter. So I give them a template and tell them to make it their own, make it heartfelt and things like that. And then sometimes I'll write some of it for them and just tell them to fill in like their family stuff because I don't know that buyer. So they fill in a letter, and then if you go to the next one, and then I do a letter. And what you have to do with that reconsideration of value is that you have to, first of all, get comparables that you're going to use and justify why you're using those. You have to explain why the appraiser, his comparables did not work, and anything else like that. So my argument with this one, and this is another thing too, like when you study and when you're going through stuff, this will help you with like future listings too. So in this particular instance, the area of town that it's in has such a big drastic change. They've got some renovated ones. So my point was, if you look, there was 46 homes that sold in the last 6 months in this area in a 1 mile radius. So all of these houses were really close together and would have been a good comp. But they sold anywhere from $30 a square foot to $148 a square foot. That's a big range. So my point was, this is very unusual. This made it really difficult to get comps that were immediately there. And in this case, I ended up sending in I sent in 4 comparables because I just wanted to prove out the fact there was plenty of houses out there that would justify the price. And I actually said that 2 of his comparables I agreed with. But if you looked at the 2 comparables, it would have brought him up to 166. But the one that he threw in, and then he put it down to 158. So as I said, this VA buyer has quite a bit of money. There is no inventory. He's already got his money tied up in this. So basically he's just not gonna be able to buy a house. He doesn't have a plan B. And this is the closing date, and we'd really appreciate anything that you could do, because in the ROV, and we can talk more about it like with more time, but you have to state the price that you're trying to get. So maybe, so in some of the cases, if I feel like I'm really reaching, I may say, you know, whatever we can get would be helpful for this buyer, so they don't have to come out of pocket. So, there was multiple offers, inventory, blah, blah, blah. And then, I attached the Tidewater grid. Is there anything past that? Or did I, yeah, and there was the Tidewater grid. So basically, it's just like that graph that I had. And I just plug it into this, I have one of these forms that I just keep in my computer blank. And if you use, something like, if you use Mac and you use Preview and you just put text boxes into a blank template each time. And I keep a lot of these, I just keep the fields the same, because the fee simple and the new residential or whatever. And I'll keep an example, so I remember which abbreviations go where. So I got that, and then there was one more, so I submitted 4 comps, and I included, the 2 that he used out of those. What did it say? There's one more, you only put 3 on one, so I did that.
Version of that, and then.
Yeah, and then that was just the comparables of the, I think that, so that I sent these, I sent the, comparables, and then I also sent the link, so they could click on the link and look at the pictures and things like that. So we got the email this morning that it was, contract price was $165. It came in at $158, right? And then we got news today that they upped the price to $164. So $1,000, we got $7,000.
Good job. That's awesome.
So I think if doing it keeping in mind that learning it and knowing that and getting that experience and kind of know that isn't going to help you just for your sellers and just for the CMAs. It'll also help your buyers. It'll help your listings. And I do think the other thing too is before, Trenton and Meredith will remember, before this past market, if you got Tidewater, it was totally up to the listing agent to fight it. And if that Tidewater came in low, it didn't matter if you had it didn't matter if that appraiser was just a jerk and just didn't want to give you value. That buyer was not going to budge and was not going to go through with it. There was enough inventory, they could terminate. They didn't have that much due diligence money on the line, they'd go buy another house. I had literally, I still think about this poor seller of mine, and we had negotiated an allowance for a new roof. The comparable, that was the exact same house plan in the neighborhood, 3 doors down, had all the upgrades in the world, new roof. And they gave my listing so little value, and the buyer's agent would not help at all. It's like, nope, I don't care if it came back $20,000 less. We want it $20,000 less, and we still want the $8,000 roof. And at that time, I mean, the sellers don't have a lot of options. You don't know when the next offer is going to come at the time. So I say this because I think continuing in this market to educate our buyers, where it's not that mentality of, no, I don't want to pay more than it's appraised for. As long as the inventory is low and they want the house and they need the house, it's working. But also, you know, they're not just, this isn't just about their loan. They're affecting their future. They're affecting their neighbors. They're affecting, you know, if we start going down in values, if you get a bad appraisal and you have to reduce a house on its price, this house is now a comp. You know, we were here when the average price point was 160,000 in this area. It never went up because it's such a VA market, and all they keep doing is using the comps from the previous 6 months and the previous 6 months. So it could only go down because we weren't getting appreciation. Now that we've gotten these prices and people are like, oh, the prices are up. The prices are normal. If not, they're still low because we never had any appreciation in this area because of VA loans. So I would just say, just knowing and being educated. So if it is your buyer and you are having to do a reconsideration of value, you know, that's not a bad thing for the buyer. We're keeping the market healthy and keeping the price points up, and it's going to be better value for their house as well. They don't want that trend to start like this and then when they go to sell in a year or two, which some people do, and then they've got to come out $30,000 out of pocket.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So we've widened the aperture beyond just the CMA. Why? Because all of these factors, thanks, Trenton, all of the steps that happen after we submit the CMA play into the decisions that we make when we're deciding where in the price range to land, or which you know, which adjustments to make or comparables to choose. Okay,
So I know that we've kind of gotten a little bit bigger here, but it all comes back to how you're making the decisions on what houses that you choose and what adjustments that you make. I'm sure there are questions, but I hope that at least so far, the differences in approach maybe take some of the edge off. And where if you feel like it's uncertain and it's ambiguous how you choose your next steps, at least you understand that's true across the board. And I would say, just personally, the best thing that I've done is gone to, and I've gone to Amethyst many times and said, you know, I'm struggling with finding the comparables for this, or do I go in this direction or that direction? And she'll tell me, and that there are other agents here who will do the same. So I would encourage you to not hesitate to do that. Any questions right now for our panelists?
What are things that eliminate something as a comp? Like she said, if it was $500 or 500 square feet difference in size, or like, what are other things that you would say, okay, maybe it has the right location, but then this other thing says no?
Great question. I would really try to avoid new construction and residential, comparing that. I would look at it for the listing appointment, I would look at it like for competition. But I would not use that in a comp. And I think just trying to stay away from the ones that are very, very different. You know, if you get one and it does have a pool, but you have several other comps that are very good comps and they don't have a pool. I think it's just trying to get the best case that's similar. You know, do I use 1 story and 2 stories? Yes. Do I go outside a mile? Yes. You know,
are you saying that you would use a 2-story for a ranch comp? But you would do
at times, yeah, depending on what I have, yeah.
Yeah, when I was reviewing appraisals the other day, I said you don't always pay attention every time they come through. Right? You're good, you're like, cool, let's move on to the next. But you like to go back and learn from it. I've been told forever, like what she said, don't use new construction. I found one that they use the new construction and they just made an age adjustment for it. And then ranch usually has more price per square foot than a 2-story does, but they use it all the time. They just adjust for the square footage.
Some of them are even using thin, I saw that.
Yeah, but some will not. Yeah.
I've also heard foreclosure. So for instance, if you have like a typical market sale and it's, you know, that you're not going to get hung up with some of the issues that can come up with on a foreclosure, depending on how well you know the house and the market that you're in right now. I've been told not to use that as a comp because the process, and I guess it probably just depends, but the process and the market conditions for that listing are going to be different than yours. So don't use it if you can. That's what I've been told.
And most anything you can adjust. So if it's like, if you only have this and this is the best thing you can use and there's 50 years of age difference, for instance, you know, you can adjust anything.
You just have to be able to justify it. Like you can't go,
Right.
well, why'd you use that new construction in your existing home CMA? Well, I mean, because it was pretty. No, I mean, you gotta be able to give a solid reason why you chose that house. So like ranch versus 2-story, use a 2-story as long as there's not a really good ranch comp right there.
Right.
I have a house in Liberty Hill right now that has plenty of comparables. And the price per square foot in Kings Grant is higher, and there are some comparables in Kings Grant that you could arguably use if it weren't for the fact that there were some 1 street over in the exact same community of Liberty Hill. So of course my sellers were like, well, we could list at this price if we use this house. I'm like, well, we could, but an appraiser is first going to use these houses, right? So they on a priority list or for us military people, like an OML, you got to use what was in the neighborhood first or whatever those closest comparables first. That's a conversation. Okay. We're right at time. Any other questions? Did y'all learn something today? Yeah. We learned something? Okay, I learned something. All right. Cool. It didn't break. Okay.
is